We're 2 days out from training camp. I'm going to tell you what my two biggest concerns are. You already know. One of them's in the trenches and one of them's on the back end. In just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You heard what she said. She said your team every day. That's true. And we always thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars, where you can find us in multiple places. And I'll tell you right now where that is. If you watch podcast, do it over on YouTube. Our YouTube channel that is Locked On Jaguars. Make sure you get over there, hit the like button. I'll say it again, hit that like button, hit subscribe, and then hit the bell so that you receive notifications each and every time we drop an episode. And then if you listen to podcasts when you're at work or driving, make sure you tap into that location each and every day so you do not miss any show that we drop here on Locked On Jaguars. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedinjobs.com or linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Shout out to all of the everydayers who watch us and listen to us every single day. You want to know how you can be one? All you got to do is listen to us or watch us every single day. All right, so here we go. I got some concerns. I don't think the concerns are big, but you have to measure them. The thing that is the most concerning, there's two of them, and they're kind of equal. I think I already told you what they are. It doesn't mean that I'm really overly concerned. I just think the team's in a real good position, but I will go through and tell you what those things are. I'm also going to tell you by the end of the show how you can alleviate those concerns, how those concerns can become just things that were on your mind and not things that actually affect how this team plays this year. But we're going to start at the very top today, telling you about the two biggest concerns before camp. We have talked all summer, all through the free agency period, the draft, and all through the times when the Jaguars are out trying to obtain talent for this team. I will go on record right now just to give you a broad statement about how I feel about the offseason. I think I don't know if it's a home run, but it's a triple. I don't think it's a stand-up triple. I think they had to slide and they had to beat the throw a little bit, but that's pretty good. And that's my way of giving Trent Baalke compliments and Doug Peterson and Shad Khan. I think the messaging has been correct. I think they learned from their mistakes a year ago, those mistakes that were made when they seemingly didn't do a whole bunch in the offseason that you would think a team like that would do. I kind of thought that they would do some of the things that Houston did this year in the offseason, but they didn't. But better late than never. I don't think the Jaguars made I think it was an error in judgment. I do believe that they can overcome that. I don't think you'll ever be able to totally wash away the fact that it happened. But you can learn from L's. L's don't have to be losses, they can be lessons, right? So you can learn from those L's and make everything a lesson. And I think the Jaguars got back on their giddy up pretty good. So we're going to break that down a little bit, talk about that, talk about the guys at the various positions that can help the team overcome some of those concerns and weaknesses, and then guys that may not even play those positions that can just do a little bit more, not outside of the scheme, but just do a little bit more to really, really help alleviate any concerns that we have. Let's just talk about them right now. The offensive line. That was, to me, the thing that cost the offense a lot of games because they weren't consistent enough up front and they weren't good enough when you had to be. And when you have to be really, really good late in games, when you have to be really, really good in the goal line area, running the football to make it easier on your quarterback to be able to get easy points when you're in easy point positions. They just didn't do enough of that last year. And then in the secondary, I think in certain critical games, they gave up too many big plays. They actually gave up. I don't think they were like giving up big plays all the time, but I do believe that what happened was some mix-ups. You think about the plays in Cleveland, you think about the plays at the end of the year in Tennessee, those long touchdowns. All of them weren't on the secondary, but I do believe that the secondary, with the way that they were playing in the old scheme and then with their shortcomings, I just think that people tried to do too much to help cover it up. So there's a difference between doing too much to cover it up, but then doing just enough so that those shortcomings don't really affect you. I'm going to start in the secondary real quick. Tyson Campbell. Tyson Campbell is, I don't know if the team is actually going to have a quote unquote shutdown corner. I don't know if they're going to play a way that when you hear so many teams talk about having the number one guy, having the number one cornerback, I don't know if it's going to be like, okay, well, he's going to lock that down and we're going to roll coverage the other way to try to help the dude on the other side of the field. I don't think the Jaguars' makeup is that way. I don't think their mindset is that way. I think it's equal and even. Everybody has to do their job. And everybody has to do it a certain way. It's going to come down to timing. It's going to come down to guys on the back end doing things well that match up with what the guys on the front end and the pass rush are going to do. They're going to be a more aggressive team. You cannot hide in this system. If you can't play, they're going to see it. But if you can play, they're going to also put you in position on defense to be able to show up and show out and do the things that allow this team to really, really, advance past the point where they did last year. So a lot of things have to gel. And y'all have heard me ad nauseum talk about the beginning schedule. I hate the fact that the Miami Dolphins are the first game because that game has the potential to make all of the offseason progress just kind of like seems like it didn't exist, because the concerns that we have with them kind of line up with Miami's strengths. So it's going to be like, okay, let's see if you fix it. But then they got to go and play the one team that can show you whether or not that secondary is good enough, or whether or not that pass rush improved enough, or whether or not they can stop the run when they have to. Miami's very good at the run. Miami's explosive on offense. Miami's receivers are very good. They run well after the catch. So that first game right away bothers me, because it's going to either show you how that you have improved, show you that you haven't improved as much as you thought, or that you're not quite there. But then those young guys on defense, I don't want them to lose too much confidence. We're going to talk about the offensive line next. And I know we've beat that. I'm glad I mentioned defense first, because I've been beating up the offensive line for 3 years, right? But I've tried to at least give them the benefit of the doubt, because they're now going to be healthy, and now they have a true professional anchor in the line at the center position. But that still doesn't mean that there's not work to do. So that's my second position that I'll hit. That's a little bit of a concern, as we're 2 days away from training camp. I'm going to make sure we go through all of that stuff. And then in segment 3, we'll tell you exactly who can help alleviate these things. Tyson Campbell can do it on defense. Mitch Morse can do it on offense. But sometimes it's not the person that plays the position where you actually have the concern that can actually help. It's people that play the complementary roles in positions at other spots that can help you out. So we're going to go through all that in segment 2. And then we're going to, land the plane on the runway real safely in segment 3 for you, to make you feel good about what we got going on 2 days before camp. All right, we'll get back to it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports, man. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs have winded down, of course, in the NBA, and now we got Major League Baseball, we get fewer games from fewer different sports. But sports aren't sporting like I want them to, but FanDuel lets me keep sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. Look, go over and check out the odds for who's going to win the championship in the National Football, who's going to be the Super Bowl champion. They're there on FanDuel. Make sure you take a look at that and see exactly where you can win some Skrilla. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. Segment number 2 here on Locked On Jaguars. We're at your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen to biggest concerns 2 days before camp. Now, these concerns aren't concerning. I know I use the word biggest, but it's the biggest one, but it might not be that big at all in terms of how I actually feel. I'm not overly concerned about anything on the Jaguars team. I'm just not. I might have more of a concern about off the field stuff, about scheme and management and personnel than I am about those guys that they have and how they're going to play, if that makes any sense. And what I mean by that is, just because you have concerns, some are bigger than others, doesn't mean the ones you have are really that big. How concerned am I? On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm about a 3.5 or a 4, and that's very, very low. That's a low number when you talk about, what are the things that could really derail this team. I think they have a pretty good chance to play well this year. I really, really do. The issue for me comes when you have to distinguish what you're being concerned about. Are you concerned that they're competitive? Absolutely not. I'm not concerned that they're not going to be competitive. Am I going to be concerned that they have something that I saw in week 11 last year where they played a real good team in the 49ers, and you saw that if they played the 49ers 10 times, the same result would happen 10 times in a row because they were just not physical enough. I don't even think that that's a bigger problem anymore, because I think they've added to their physicality in a lot of ways without actually adding a whole bunch of physical offensive linemen. I think that they were soundly beaten in every aspect when they played that good team last year, and my concern was there wasn't nothing they could do about it. So when it comes to whether or not I believe the Jaguars can't physically play with somebody, I will tell you no. That I no longer believe that that's where the Jacksonville Jaguars are. I don't think for 1 minute that somebody's just going to come out, and somebody might do it one game, but I don't think it's an epidemic like it was last year, to the point where, okay, when they play a physical team, they can't do anything. And that's literally the way I felt last year when the Jacksonville Jaguars played anybody that had playoff aspirations, that had that type of physical dominating play that seemed to derail the Jaguars, especially in big time situations. So yeah, I don't think that that's going to be the issue this year. I really do not. I think if they lose this year, it's going to be a one-off. Like if somebody actually out physicals them, because you can still be, whether or not you match somebody's physicality or not, you still got to go out and play the game. So they may have a game or two where someone out physicals them, or they may have a game where they weren't the most physical team, but at least they can go back now and regroup, and they can, hey man, let's go. Before, there's nothing a pep talk was going to do. Pep talk wasn't going to help you last year when it comes to being physical. They just weren't. They didn't even have it. There was no even a need to reach in their back. You could tell them to try as hard as they want to, and I think they were trying hard. They just weren't physical enough. Now, I do believe they're bigger. I think they're stronger. I think they're deeper. I think they're going to depend on them a lot more of the young players. And on that offensive line, it's going to be about Mitch Morse. It's going to be about all of those guys getting healthy. That is the only thing that I could say, okay, now, y'all told us that it wasn't really about those guys personally as much as it is them being healthy. And what I mean by that is they told us, no, ain't nothing wrong with them. They're pretty good, man. It's just that they just got to get healthy. And if they get healthy, we'll be okay. So from that perspective, I'm going to give the Jaguars the benefit of the doubt and say, all right, so I want to see if that's true. I want to make sure that while I'm watching this, that manifests itself, right? I want that to be true. I want it to be, okay, they were exactly right. They shouldn't have got rid of those dudes. They shouldn't have added another player. They shouldn't have got rid of Brandon Sheriff. They should have re-signed Ezra Cleveland. See, those are the concerns that I have a little bit. It's more off the field than anything. It's not about the people on the field. I think those guys can play up to their potential and still it not be good enough. But there's ways you can overcome that. The way you can overcome offensive line play is make more big plays on offense. That's why guys like Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Etienne can really help that offense, because when they have a chance to make a huge big play, just that alleviates worry about how good Mitch Morse is going to be. And it alleviates whether or not they can move people. If you just keep scoring points from a long distance and from a long ways away and taking advantage of your opportunities, then guess what? We'll never know whether or not Mitch Morse and those guys can move people when they have to move people, because the Jaguars, if they score 31 points a game, they're probably going to win a whole bunch of games. They're probably going to win a whole bunch of games if they do that. Defensively, if they're able to stop the run and turn the ball over and make the other team way more predictable, especially on third down when it's time to get them off the field, and Chris Richard and, of course, Ryan Nielsen, they've come up with something where they can keep the offense off balance a little bit, and the down and distance can start dictating that these guys can mix and match, and you won't have to put so much pressure on one player. I think the one guy that changes a lot of stuff for this team is probably Andre Cisco. Andre Cisco can, if he can play single high, which I know he can, and he can stay healthy, he'll give this defense a shot in the arm where even if the corner gets beat, they've always got that help. And he has the ability and the physical frame and the explosiveness to really, really, really alleviate or get rid of potential big plays. Jarian Jones can be another young player, a young player who steps up and does some things where they're not totally dependent on Ronald Darby to do things that he probably hadn't done in a few years. So all of those things are going to really, really make a difference. Like how good those guys are at the point of their performance, and then how other guys can do things, not trying to do too much, because you want everybody to do their job. You get in trouble when you start trying to do too much. But if you do your job so well that bleeds over and it'll allow, like that cup runneth over, and it allows other players to maybe get away with a little bit. But for instance, if the pass rush is up the point, it won't matter very much how those guys play on the back end, because if they don't allow people to get open right away and that pass rush can get there, then you won't see whether or not these guys have a lot of trouble. So the example I'm going to give you is this. If you watch anything or know anything about the Dallas Cowboys had a dude that set a record for pick sixes. They also, a year before that, had another dude who was like one of the dudes that led the league in interceptions. And they had games where they could just totally dominate people with all of those pass rushers and Micah Parsons running all over the place. But then when they got in these big games, the games that really, really mattered, that stuff didn't work. They'd hit a play here and a play there every now and then. But when you go up against a real good team, it's like, no, they ain't working against us. It's almost like boxing when you see a dude so dominant and you think he's going to do that against somebody else. And then there's somebody else that comes in and they're just a little bit better and they have different footwork. And all of a sudden, none of that stuff works against this guy. And you're like, how did that happen? Well, it happens because when you increase competition and when you increase competency, some of those things that you're able to get away with against bad teams, they just don't work the same way against really, really good teams. I'm measuring the Jaguars based on how I think they're going to play against the Houstons, the Clevelands, the Kansas Cities, the Baltimores, when it's time, the Green Bays, other teams like that on their schedule. I hope that they are beyond and they're past the point of where they lose the teams that they should beat. Because if they aren't past that, then we're in a world of hurt and we're in a world of trouble. So I'm going to tell you some more reasons why I think those things can be eased. Some of the worry that can be eased. I'm going to give you 4 or 5 names of guys that I think are going to have career years. And if those guys have those career years, what that will mean for everyone else here in Jacksonville. But not before I let you know about Locked On Sports Today, because if you're watching Fox Sports or ESPN or your TV all day And you got to turn down the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. 5 or 6 guys that I think can make a tremendous difference for this team and alleviate any concerns you have. We'll get to that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by LinkedIn. That's right, LinkedIn Talent Solutions. Man, if you have ever owned a business or a company, you know what it's like trying to staff it while you're trying to build it. You're dealing with contractors, you're dealing with trying to get permits and licensing, and then you got to find people to come work for you. Well, LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even if those people aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to a perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading sites. That's right. They don't look at other job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Here's what you do, man. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl, all one word, to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. That's LinkedIn jobs/lockedonnfl. Third segment here on Locked On Jaguars. We talked about the two biggest areas of concern for me. It's offensive line and the defensive backs. The front line on offense and the back line on defense, in my opinion, is where if there's a problem for this team or if there's something that you need to monitor or watch, that's where it is. And you're going to have a chance to do it real quick and real early in week 1. Now, for me, the offensive line ought to be able to come out and move people around earlier when you consider the Miami Dolphins are banged up on offense. So they should have a pretty good time. It's going to tell me a lot in week 1 what the Jaguars' mindset is. Are they just going to force their will on people, or are they going to adjust to whatever team they're playing against and try to go for the biggest and best matchup against those teams? And it could be a combination of both. I want to see them go out and really, really establish the run and try to run the football. That's how you keep the other team off the field if they have an explosive offense. You wear them out. You try to wear them out with physicality. Do they have the ability to do that? They told us that the line is cool as long as everybody stays healthy, and Mitch Morse provides the veteran leadership that has been missing here with center and the competent center play. My concern is that they underplayed that a little bit, and I think there's a lot of other people that might agree that that's something that I wish they would have gone overkill with, and maybe not in free agency, but at least with young bodies in the draft. It's going to be something to watch to see if Trent Baalke and Doug Peterson were right, and Phil Roush, the offensive line coach, if they were really, really right about that. Like I said, we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt, but that's a little bit concerning. I do believe the scheme change, along with the additions that were made on defense, adding multiple defensive back. Darnell Savage doesn't get mentioned enough, in my opinion. That was a big signing for them. Now, there's some trepidation from some, because I talked to people who follow or who actually covered the Green Bay Packers. Shout out to my man Peter Bukowski with Locked On Packers. Joe Barry was the defensive coordinator that just kind of ticked everybody off in Green Bay, a couple of years ago. Did they really? Was it the scheme? Was it something they were asking Darnell Savage to do? Because it seems like he should have got a lot more play in free agency. Or is this a situation where the Jaguars, they already had a beat on him? They had their own scouting book on Darnell Savage, and they know what they're going to ask him to do, as opposed to what he was asked to do somewhere else. Maybe the Jags know something that we all don't know, because guys like Darnell Savage usually don't come at the price tag. If he's worth the money, it doesn't come at the price tag that he came at. Or maybe the Jaguars also just realize, hey, it's it's sort of not really a minimum look, because he is making some money, but it's a good bargain for us to have him because he's versatile. He can give us a lot of versatility at the slot as well as at safety. He gives us a whole bunch there. And he does have a knack for being around the football. So maybe they're also trying to just have as many bodies as they can back there with guys that they know can be active and help create some turnovers and some turnover situations. So Darnell Savage is going to be a big addition, and he can help. We talked about Andre Cisco on defense being a big help. We talked about Trayvon Walker last week. Trayvon Walker along with Josh Allen. Josh Allen, he's got that big contract, and I have no doubt that he's going to be able to step up also. We talked about Devon Hamilton in the middle, in the addition of Eric Armstead, who is going to start on the PUP list during training camp. So that's something that needs to be monitored as well. But the front end playing along with the back end can help cover up a lot of things, or a lot of warts, or a lot of concerns that you may have on offense. Guys like Gabe Davis, who are going to keep the sticks moving, and they're going to do it differently and allow Trevor Lawrence to attack the middle of the field. I think that's huge. That could take a lot of pressure off of the offensive line, can put the defense on skates a little bit, and then you can start scheming up some things that you want to do. I'm not as concerned about the talent level and the players as much as I am concerned about how it's going to be implemented, and whether or not mentally the coaches can do a better job of having this team prepared and ready to play this year. Interested to see as training camp starts, how the vibe and what like the thermostat of this team is going to be. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow. We're going to talk about the things that they can do differently in camp. That's going to, I told you I wanted a little bit more chippy. So tomorrow we're going to discuss the things that they can do in camp that can make sure and ensure that they don't have the type of beginning that they had last year, even though they were winning games. That they knew they weren't winning in the way they wanted to, and they weren't playing away, and that it wasn't sustainable. But they just couldn't figure it out, and they just couldn't get it up. The one thing I'm going to listen out for is some of the things that we heard last year that used to tick me off, and that's guys talking about they need to get out of town and how focused they are and making excuses about the weather and the noise. That stuff has to go. So mentally, I want those things, and psychologically, I want those things to stay as far away from this team as possible, and those are things that we will discuss tomorrow as we look forward. It'll be training camp eve on tomorrow, so it is going to be something to behold and something to watch out for. I'm gonna give you something else to watch out for. That's Locked On Sports Today, because the network has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV channels app. So mainly what I want to tell you is there are players that are good enough to do their job and do their job well enough that it'll bleed over and maybe make up for some of the things that you and I may be concerned about on this team. Let me know some of the things that you're concerned about, some of the people that you're concerned about. Put them in the comments on YouTube or hit me up on the X app and let me know exactly how you feel about this show and about how you feel about the team as a whole. We'll see you tomorrow. We're going to talk about training camp. We're going to talk about, as we said, how do you psychologically not put this team to sleep the way the Jaguars, I think, did last off season, and what are the things that they can do to proactively make sure that doesn't happen. All right, man. You guys take care of each other, and I will do the same. We'll see you next time here on Locked On Jaguars.